Hey there, welcome to Sonic Safety. I am your host, Sam Watts. Today's a different episode. Today I've actually got a special guest that I was able to talk to, and it's going to be, I think you're really going to like this one. So without further ado, here's my interview with Wendy Buckley. Wendy, thank you very much for being on Sonic Safety. You are my first guest, so hopefully this all goes according to plan. But thank you very much for being on my show today.
Well, I am honored to be your first guest. I didn't realize that I was your first total, forever. So that's pretty cool. I was another podcast first guest, and now I go back on theirs every year. So hint, hint.
Oh, well, hey, we'll see how it goes today. But if it goes well, then, no, I'm just kidding. It's funny because I had a previous podcast and I went to someone else's studio, and so I used their footage on my podcast as well. So I'm not sure who was the guest really on that podcast. So maybe you're not my first, but I'm going to say you are because I went to their place. It is what it is. So, but no, I'm happy to have you on today because I'm a safety guy. You're a safety gal. But I will tell you right now that you do HazMat. I don't know that much about HazMat. That is kind of my weaker area when it comes to safety because there is so much to know about HazMat and so much can get you in trouble when it comes to that. So my first question for you is, how in the world did you get into HazMat safety?
So believe it or not, I was actually going to be a Marine Corps pilot. I was getting ready to leave for officer candidate school. And I had a long talk with my dad, who was a Vietnam vet, and very quickly decided that was not the life I wanted. So I canceled that plan and I joined the fire department instead. So I became a firefighter, and then I got some training in HazMat and started responding to HazMat calls. And my very first call got me hooked. I mean, it was just so cool and dramatic. And, I'm sure the truck driver who was involved didn't think so, but man, as a, 18, 19-year-old kid, I couldn't get enough. It was amazing. Then eventually about, 8-10 years later, something like that, I had the opportunity to be an FRA HazMat inspector. So Federal Railroad Administration, inspecting railroads that ship hazardous materials and companies that offer HazMat for transportation. And so I love that. I mean, I didn't know a lot about rail at that time, so they gave me that training. But to combine rail, which I just absolutely loved, and HazMat was like the dream come true for me. So I did that for a while. Then I became a trainer. So I was training all over the country on not only DOT regulations, but also the IATA air regulations and the IMDG vessel regulations, both for international transport and domestic too. And then also Transport Canada. So I taught at least hundreds of classes by now. I don't even know how many. And then I became a regulatory affairs manager for a global laboratory supply company. So I got to see all kinds of different things there. That was really fun. Totally different world, small packages mostly. And then I started this company. So I've been here. I've had my company now for 13 years, Stars HazMat Consulting. And we basically help shippers, carriers, distributors, warehouses do what they do better, safer, more profitably. A lot of companies handle HazMat, but that's not their primary business. It's what they do ancillary to create their product or whatever. So that's not their expertise. So by hiring me to help manage their program or consult them on how to do it better or more efficiently, I help them continue to focus on their core business, but still handle the HazMat in a way that manages risk and improves safety and compliance.
Wow. Okay. That is quite the story. I'm always intrigued as to how people get into this industry because some people like myself are born into it. Some people like you, just kind of have that almost eureka moment of, hey, this is actually kind of cool. I like how you said the truck driver probably didn't think it was cool. But because I'm sure he didn't. So I'm always kind of curious as to how people get in, because quite frankly, and you know this as well as I do, once you get into this industry, you're not getting out. I mean, you can try, but now with you, with hazmat training and stuff like that, you have so much information in your head that is completely useless in every other walk of life. So you have to stay in it now. That's how I feel, at least.
There's a lot of truth to that. But, honestly, I absolutely love my job. The consulting part of it is my favorite. I love being able to find solutions for people. Really, that's what I am. I'm a problem solver. So I identify, or they identify the problems, and I help them find, cost-effective ways to solve the problem that's not going to disrupt their operation. And I just love that challenge. It's always something different. My phone rings every day, and it's a new, exciting thing I didn't know about the day before. So I just love it. I wouldn't do anything else. Even if I became wealthy tomorrow, I would probably still do this, at least until I'm old, because I'm not on my own.
That's interesting. You say, you've been in it for so long, and yet you're still learning new things every time you go out there. I mean, I think a lot of people like to think of consultants or people who've been in this industry, they've seen it all, they know it all, but it's like, man, that's the beauty of the trucking industry. One of the things that I like about it, and you do more transportation, because I don't touch ships, I don't touch trains. I did some intermodal work way back in the day. I did enough of it to know that I'm not touching that ever again. There was way too much, because I don't think a lot of people know this, but when you put stuff onto a train, like all of a sudden now you're dealing with like federal stuff. I mean, yeah, I know you deal with federal stuff with over the road type trucking as well, but like there's a lot more, like there's homeland security stuff that you got to deal with now, and just it was like I said, it was enough of that for me to go, I'm not going to do this ever again. But apparently you know more about that than I do. So when you put stuff onto a train, is it all like liquid hazmat stuff? That's what you deal with when it comes? No. Okay. What?
So tank cars are typically the biggest transporters of hazardous materials, right? So liquids or solids that can become liquid, such as if you steam them, melt them, and gases. So there's a broad range of things that it can carry, but there are plenty of hazardous materials in intermodal containers, and there's some hazardous materials in dry form in hopper cars. Box cars can carry hazardous materials. So yeah, there's a lot of different ways. And then, the thing when Homeland Security comes into it is usually if the train is going to a port, so specifically intermodal transport, because you can have a lot of trains that don't go to ports. So if it goes to a port, then you have to worry about all of the various acronyms having to do with security and whatnot. So then, yeah, but on a typical train that's not intermodal, generally you don't have that unless it's a very high danger product. So something that's a significant poison inhalation hazard, for example, or something that is typically known to be used for malicious intent. So certain types of explosives, for example, those would be protected by Homeland Security. But most shipments are not.
Interesting. Yeah, when I think of tankers on the railroad, I live up here in the northern part of the Midwest, and anytime I see tankers on the railroad, it's basically oil. That they're shipping in from North Dakota or wherever it's coming from. But it's kind of funny that I tell people this as well. It's like, I don't. Have you ever seen one of those like CIA type movies or any sort of like FBI movie where like there's like a nuclear bomb that's about to go off, and there's only about like 6 people that know about it, and they're stopping it. And they're like in public, and everybody in the public is just completely oblivious to it. I kind of feel that way sometimes with trucking. It's like, you pass the semi truck, and you might get annoyed because there's a semi truck on the road and whatever. But if only you knew what was in that, like maybe you wouldn't want to be around it. And I'm sure the same is in the hazmat world. It's like, they see just this. I'm sure the general public doesn't even know what kind of trailer it is. It's just a tanker trailer. And it's like, if only you knew what exactly was in there, you might just not want to ride next to him for as long as you are and get out of his blind spot and not be a nuisance to that driver. I'm sure you see that quite a bit with your stuff.
Well, and I'll tell you one thing that people really don't get is that hazmat is everywhere. It's either part of everything that we make into as either an ingredient or a precursor or something, or whatever we're using is hazardous materials. So, like for example, lithium batteries, definitely a hazardous material, right? You can know that. Gasoline, you can guess that that's a hazmat. But some of the other things you might not think about is we wouldn't have a food supply if we didn't have pesticides and fertilizers. And if you have materials like cooking sprays or vanilla extract or other flavorings, those are all hazardous materials. Any sort of aerosol can of any kind is a hazardous material. The silverware that you eat your dinner with is chromed. That's a hazardous material. The whole process going into the chroming process is HazMat. Now, is it dangerous when you put it in your mouth? No, or we wouldn't be able to do that. But the process that goes into making it, even your shampoo, your cosmetics, your perfume, cologne, you name it. I mean, things around us, most of the pieces of your car involve hazardous materials. I mean, everything. You carry lithium batteries in your pocket or on your wrist every day. And it's just so prolific. And people are like, oh, why can't we just get rid of them? They're so dangerous. Well, because we wouldn't have our quality of life without them. Just from the food supply aspect of pesticides and fertilizers, we wouldn't be able to feed the world if we didn't have those things. So it's everywhere. So it's in so many trucks that are not placarded because you don't have to placard everything, just certain small amounts and stuff like that. You don't need a placard. So you're not always going to see a placard, even though it's HazMat. I got news for you. Every single passenger plane that you fly on has HazMat in the cargo hold because they make more money on a package of hazardous materials per package than they do per passenger. So every passenger plane carries hazardous materials.
Really? See, this is stuff I don't know. I've been in trucking my whole life. Again, I fully admitted to you beforehand that I don't know much about HazMat. This is the stuff that I wonder how many actual people do know this kind of stuff, and it's funny you bring up placarding.
Trucks, Amazon trucks, they all carry HazMat every day. UPS, all of them.
That is terrifying. Okay, so all around us on the road is just things that are ready to go boom. No, maybe not. But
think about this. All of that HazMat shipping happening every day all around you. And how often does something go wrong? Really wrong. Very rarely. In fact, the last statistic I looked at, which is now a couple years old, but this has been a consistent statistic over decades. So there's over 1 million hazardous material shipments every day in the U.S. And less than 1%, I think it's 0.001% of those materials are involved in a leak of some sort.
Huh. So it's a safe way to ship things, is what you're saying.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and there's there's different levels of safe, right? So, and those numbers are touch skewed, and I'll explain why. But generally, trucking is going to be the most common mode of transportation that's involved in a HazMat incident. Part of the reason for that, though, it's not because the truckers are horrible or whatever. It's because, there's so many more trucks than anything else. For every tank car that you see on the highway or on the road, that takes the place of 3 trucks just for the one car. And you think about a train can have 100 or 200 cars in it. That's 3 to 4 tanks of material in each of those rail cars. So it cuts down a significant number of trucks, but there's so many more trucks than there are rail cars that the number is completely skewed. Air and vessel are also close to rail in terms of incident ratios, but HazMat is very, very safe to ship because we take so many precautions. There's so many regulations. There's oversight from the government. There's people like me who are out there trying to make sure that the shippers and whatnot are doing the right thing and packaging the stuff right. And the packaging is tested to within an inch of its life to make sure it's going to keep the stuff inside. So there's a lot of things that we've done over the years that help prevent incidents from happening, and it works.
I'm glad you were able to kind of bring that around to safety, because obviously Sonic Safety is the podcast and I talk about safety, and that's what I do. I do safety for over the road stuff and not necessarily HazMat stuff. Although I have done work with hazardous companies and stuff like that. I don't get into the details like you do. They bring me in for some more big picture type stuff and just overall safety procedures. Because I fully admit to them, I'm not going to get into the HazMat piece of it. I worked with the company who hauled a little bit of HazMat in their box truck, not box trucks, but in their dry van trailers, and their biggest question is, well, does this need to be placarded? Does this need to be placarded? And I would go back to them with everything. My common response was, did you Google it? Because that's exactly what I'm going to be doing to see if it, because you have what is it, your class 9? Is that the class 9 HazMat that doesn't need to be placarded, or it needs to be placarded, but the driver doesn't need the endorsement on a CDL, or is it class 8? Or it's one of those, I think, isn't it?
Well, first of all, let me just caution your audience that Googling it is not the right way to go. So first of all, the only authority is the CFR, but it's a little bit difficult to read. So if for some reason you read the CFR and you don't understand it, or you're not sure exactly how it applies to you, that's what you have people like me for. We have a HazMat help desk that, basically is like an IT help desk, right? I got the blue screen of death. I got to call the IT guy. It's the same thing here. I don't know if I need to placard this product, but I have this HazMat expert on retainer, and let me go ask them, and you'll get an answer, and you'll know what you're supposed to do. But yes, Class 9 placards in the United States only are not required. Canada, Mexico, anywhere internationally, they are. But in the U.S., we don't require them. And because we don't require placards for Class 9s, you're not required to have an endorsement to haul them, even if you have a whole truckload.
Gotcha. Yeah, that was one, and that's a great plug. If you are doing HazMat stuff, make sure you contact Wendy so that you can put her on retainer and not contact me about that kind of stuff, because I will lead you astray. And I think it's all just kind of how you were brought. Like, you could be, I know very, very, very few safety people in the transportation world that are experts in everything. And, maybe they're saying the right things to me to make me think that they're an expert, but we all kind of have our little, departments. And like I said, HazMat is not my department. I didn't grow up in HazMat. I grew up in the reefer world, which if you're not from the trucking industry, you think is a much different world than what it is. But I grew up in the refrigerated transportation world, and the dry van world. And those have their own little pieces. You got your HazMat guys, you got your local farm guys with the hopper bottoms and the grain truck. I mean, all of those different types of transportation have their own little quirks that if you're not in it, you might not know it. So that's a great thing. Don't Google it. If you take one thing away from this podcast, don't Google it. Contact Wendy so that you make sure that you get the right stuff. Because, yeah, if you want to get put out of service pretty quickly, it's don't placard your trailer and haul HazMat stuff. I'm guessing you get shut down pretty quickly, and I'm guessing that the fines are pretty significant when it comes to stuff like that.
Yeah, so unfortunately, the HazMat CSA score does not actually put you out of service. I wish it would. I wish it would be so that if you get so many points that you lose your endorsement or your company loses its registration, they can't ship it. Because honestly, one of the highest risk things on that paper scores, and then what do? They say, oh, that's not going to take you out of service. In fact, the public can't even see that. The public can see everything else that you do, all of your other scores, but only you can see your HazMat score, which is just ridiculous. But the fines are substantial, especially in the more sensitive areas like air transportation. You're going to pay a lot more than you will in ground transportation, for example, but it is going to cost you if you don't comply. And more importantly, God forbid, something isn't done right. You don't properly secure the load, or the shipper didn't properly close the package, and you have what should be just a little tiny fender bender or something. And then now you've got HazMat all over the place. The bridge is on fire. The trees are on fire. Who knows? But that's going to really cost you. So making a mistake in this industry, it doesn't happen often. But when it does, it goes very wrong.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And I can even speak to the fact of, even if you're not a HazMat or a hazardous hauler type thing, it's always good to have someone like you in your back pocket, because I know this from personal experience. And it's funny you say you just never know when it's going to happen, because I had a truck that I was watching. It was part of a fleet, and he got into an accident, ran into a bridge. I think what happened, he always said that he just reached for something and it crashed, but I think he fell asleep. But we didn't have the inward facing camera, so I can't prove anything. But I think he fell asleep and he ran into a bridge, just a back county road, but it had a concrete bridge on there, and he hit it hard. The problem is that when he hit it, he ruptured his fuel tanks. And so now all of a sudden you've got a massive HazMat issue, because the fuel tanks, it was on a bridge, so the fuel tanks, all that diesel fuel fell down into the creek below, and now all of a sudden we had to get EPA involved, and we had to get agencies I'd never even heard of involved. So it's like, this is why you need to have people like Wendy in your back pocket, because I wasn't a HazMat hauler, but all of a sudden I'm now dealing with HazMat issues, and I'm at the mercy of everyone else trying to tell me what to do, because I don't know. I don't know what needs to happen. I didn't know that we need to set up stuff in the creek and all that kind of stuff. So, what Wendy does, what you do, even if you're not a hazmat hauler, you still could get roped into hazmat stuff.
Yeah, it does happen. And, you know, I mentioned my help desk, not so much to plug the company, which of course, you know, that's a great thing, but, you know, yes, I'm in this business to make money. Obviously, this is my livelihood. This is what feeds my 4 children. But, you know, I am very passionate about this job. I'm very passionate about the work that we do and keeping people safe. I've seen some pretty horrific things during my time at the fire department and my time in FRA, and even since I've been a consultant. And it's just become my life's mission to make those things go away, right? To stop those things from happening before they happen. So I am very passionate. I want to help people. I want to give people that education, just so these things don't happen. I mean, even if all I do is teach you how to know when something is wrong. I had a situation recently where one of my clients, or they were not my client at the time, but they hired me later, had this horrific incident that got so much worse than it should have because they didn't realize that an emergency was actually happening. They didn't recognize it for what it was, and it became a catastrophic failure. So, you know, something like that, like if they had known, if they had been properly trained as to what to look for, what the warning signs were, what could go wrong, they could have stopped it a lot sooner than they did, and it would have much minimized the outcome.
You know, it's funny you mentioned your passion for this is your passion. I know quite a few safety guys, and every single one of them to a T says that same thing. You know, safety is never going to be the coolest or the hippest department to be in, but the ones that are in it, there's trucking companies out there that have safety guys, and they're just guys that, you know, didn't maybe do well at operations, so they just threw them in safety and there they go. But the people who truly understand safety and understand the significance of it and the repercussions of not following it, it really does turn into a passion. I've said it to multiple people that, you know, high school Sam would probably beat up this now 41-year-old Sam because, like, safety, like, we were supposed to be in a punk rock band and like make movies, and now you're in safety and you have a passion for it? Like, it's ridiculous. But it truly is, like you said, it truly turns into that, and wanting to help people and do that. Like, I don't ever want to be that wet blanket, or I don't want to be the Captain Fun Killer. I just want to make sure you guys understand what you're doing and what the repercussions are if you ignore it. And it sounds like you're in the same boat.
That's a key point that you just made right there, because that, I think, is, in my experience, one of the places where safety people go really wrong. So here's the thing. I am definitely about safety. Want to put that out there right up front, because what I'm going to say may be controversial. But safety cannot rule everything in terms of there is a point at which the benefits that you're going to get from that next safety measure, the cost far outweighs those benefits. And so you're not, you know, there's some statistic. You can get, you know, 80% of the benefit, but then the last 20% cost you more than the first 80%. You know, I forget exactly how the thing goes, but there is a point at which you're shutting down operations, you're preventing people from working. You know, you have to find, the key is you have to find ways to achieve safety, to achieve compliance that works seamlessly with the operation. Obviously, if somebody's doing something that they shouldn't be doing, going up a 16-foot ladder with no fall protection, okay, stop that, right? But, you know, but if it's a case where it's going to give you an incremental benefit in terms of safety, but cost you a ton or completely gum up the operation, then that approach is not a good one. If you truly need to achieve that safety goal, find a better way, right? Once you start hampering operations and costing people so much money that they can no longer remain profitable, they're not going to do it. They're going to say, well, forget that. We're going to do what we've always done. But if you can find ways to help them comply, to help them be safe, that increase their profitability and their efficiency and makes their operation better without causing them more pain, they're going to do it every time because it's to their benefit. It's to their advantage. You start making things painful for people and they're not going to do it. So you have to find a better way.
And that is, you know, it's interesting because we kind of have, I think, similar background. I was never a firefighter, but like we come to safety from an operations background. And I've said this 100 times on different podcasts and my own and everything, is that a lot of safety guys come from either like a legal or an insurance type background, which, again, I'll say this again, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, there's some of the smartest people I know, and they know safety inside and out, and they're really good at what they do. But I think coming from an operations background, or more of I don't know. I mean, you kind of have the operations background too, is that like we are able to kind of see what you want to do and how we can help you get to there. Like that's why I always kind of say is my little trick up my sleeve is like, I came from operations in a trucking company. I know what the dispatch wants to do. I know what ownership wants to do. How can I make it so that we're doing everything by the book, but yet we're also able to do it? Because sometimes, like you said, sometimes with safety, you get so risk adverse that you just kind of almost shut down. And it's like, guys, we're in a risky industry. Like, there's no way we're going to take away 100% of the risk. We could put every procedure in place and still we can get caught up in risk. So you're right. It's finding that balance of this is what we should do. This is how we should do it. And then we just have to kind of say, now do it and follow the procedures. But yeah, you can't make it to where they can't do anything because like you said, they're not going to do it then. How do you find that point of here's as much as we're willing to risk, now go and do it? That's I think what the safety person's ultimate goal is.
Here's the other thing that I think safety people often forget about is they might go out and create a new procedure and say, here, do this. But two things. One, was the people that are doing the job part of the stakeholder group? Did they get a say? Because you, being a safety person, that's not your primary expertise, whatever that operation is. So, do you understand how that process actually works on a day-to-day basis, the problems they face, the challenges they face? But then, more importantly, once you have a procedure and everyone says, yes, this is going to work, then go out and audit that procedure. Not only audit that they're following that procedure, but that the procedure itself is working, right? Mm-hmm. If it, looks great on paper, but in the real world, it's a hot mess, they're not going to do it. So, making sure that you follow up and is this working? Are there issues? Is there something here that we could do better? Just recently I had one of my clients had this process about how they route rail cars through their terminal, weighing the car, inspecting the car, making repairs if necessary, loading the car. And so in the process of this very circuitous route, they passed the same point 3 times. So by making a small little change, it saved them a lot in efficiency and money and time. They could turn more cars, and it was something they could implement right away. And they said, wow, all these years we've never thought about it. It's because you have always done it that way. So you see no reason to change it. You don't think about it. But I'm just a fresh set of eyes. And all I did was ask, why aren't you doing it this way? Mm-hmm. And it changed their whole operation. They're able to process more cars in a day, which means more money.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great point, is putting a procedure in place. Like, even as safety people, we don't know if this is going to work. We think this is going to work. We think this will be what needs to happen, but put it in place and then audit it, inspect what you expect. That's what my dad always taught me. And yeah, it's like, does it work? Does it work for operations? Does it work for the driver? Does it work for the operator? Just, is it working? Like, because like you said, I've seen things that operations have done where they want this to happen. And it's like, it's not happening because it's so cumbersome on the driver, or it's so cumbersome on maintenance or something like that. And it's like, no one's doing it. And so it's like, why do we have this in place? Because if you have a policy and something were to happen and you find out, and a lawyer especially finds out that no one's been following this policy, then you're actually doing more harm than good to yourself. So it's, always check to make sure that what you have in place is actually working. And audit. That's a great point that I think a lot more people need to hear, is that you can put procedures in place, but make sure that they work and make sure that you're following them. And if they don't work, cut it out.
Yeah, find a better way, change the procedure, eliminate unnecessary steps, and God forbid, please don't make a 54-page procedure, okay? Procedures don't work when they're half a page, and they don't work when they're 54 pages, because I like to read, but that's ridiculous. Like, I'm not sitting down and reading a 54-page procedure. I think I would cut my eyes out at that point. Mm-hmm. So, make it reasonable, make it concise, enough information that they can do the job properly, even with photographs. I like to have photographs in procedures. But if you get too in the mess, no one's going to read it. Mm-hmm. They can't follow something they don't know what it says.
I reviewed a driver policy handbook the other day. 80 pages for a it's like, I'm not even reading that. Cripe.
I went through college and two masters and all of this stuff. And man, reading anything that's 80 pages in technical lingo is just torture.
Yeah. Yep. No, I agree. But that's been that was interesting. Well, Wendy, this has been interesting. I don't want to take up too much of your time because I try to be conscious of that stuff. But I mean, I'm sure we could probably talk for a couple hours on HazMat. And like I said, I'm sure we can. I know the host and owner of this show. I'm sure we could probably get you back on and discuss a little bit more sometime. But what I want to do to finish out the show, and you're going to be my guinea pig, and I don't mean that in any derogatory way, is I like to, like I said, I like learning how people get into this industry, and I like knowing the person behind, the whole consulting and safety thing. Like, we've ran into each other on LinkedIn, and we all look really cool and professional on there. But one of my biggest pet peeves with that is that no one really opens up in an interesting way. Yeah, you have some people that treat it a little more like Facebook, and that's not what I'm talking about. But I like to know the person behind it. So, if you will, I want to play a quick game called the Supersonic Round, where I got a couple questions for you that might be a little off topic, a little off safety, but will help us learn a little bit more about Wendy. Is that all right if we do that?
That's good, yeah.
Okay, so, and we'll go quickly through this here, and just say whatever comes to your mind first. Nothing's going to be crazy. All right, so here's the first one. You're in the WWE, the Wrestling Federation. What's your entrance song? Your entrance music comes on, you come out. What song is playing for your entrance music?
The only one that pops into my mind is "Eye of the Tiger."
By Survivor.
It's all that's popping in my mind at the moment because the Farrah Fawcett, that hair on that one movie. Yeah.
Interesting. Eye of the Tiger. Going classic rock. I can appreciate that. Yeah. Okay, number 2. What looks easy but actually isn't? And it doesn't have to be safety related. It could just be life in general. What looks easy but isn't? According to you.
I'm gonna go to my favorite hobby here because there's so many people who think, oh, let's just go do it, but there's actually really a lot to it, and that's shooting. I do competitive pistol shooting. I love it, but it's not like just going to the range and pulling the trigger 50 times really fast and seeing, if you actually do it right and want to be good at it, there's a lot of training, there's a lot of practice, like true practice, not just throwing some lead down the field, that goes into it, and lots to take into consideration. And a lot of people talk recently, I've heard about concealed weapons and things like that. And that's no joke, it's not just like carrying around a gun. There's a lot more to it than that. Mm-hmm. And I love shooting, but if you're going to do it right, you gotta put the work into it.
Are you talking about like clay pigeon shooting or actual target shooting?
Target shooting.
Target shooting. Okay. Yeah. No, that's great. I like doing that too. Okay, here we go. Number 3, tomorrow you are transported to the Middle Ages. What's your job? What are you doing?
Can I be the queen?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, just go kill the queen and take over. I get it. Yeah.
I'd end up as a chambermaid, but I'd rather be the queen.
Sure. Yeah. No, that makes sense. No, that's a good answer. If you could have an animal sidekick, what would it be?
An elephant.
An elephant.
I love elephants. They are so smart and so compassionate, and they're such good parents, and they have such amazing family ties. I have so much respect for elephants. Plus, then I could ride them, and I could reach high things, which I can't now because I'm only 5 feet tall. So I could get my stuff out of my own cabinet. That would be amazing.
Interesting. Yeah. Elephant. Yeah, and no one would mess with
it. I have a stool to hang my clothes in my closet.
Nice. Well, that's a good one. All right. Couple more here. It's trivia night. What category are you dominating in?
History.
History.
Yeah, I know nothing about pop culture. I know nothing about television. I would do miserable in any of those. I don't even know what half the shows on are. So yeah, history would be where I would do well.
Like what time period? What time period are we talking about?
Oh gosh, I listen to everything. I read books, I listen to podcasts, I watch documentaries. That's the only thing I really watch on TV. So, I mean, you want to talk about space, you want to talk about the periods in history, like the period of, Julius Caesar and Cleopatra and all of that is so fascinating. But there's so much more. I mean, and I love hearing about the history in different countries, like different dynasties and what they did and what the key things in their period was. I just love learning about it. Their culture is just so fascinating to me.
Interesting. I love history too. My wife homeschools our kids, and that's one thing that she really focuses on is the history piece of it, because it's fascinating and it shapes who we are and how we do things, and yeah, it's a fascinating piece.
I homeschooled my kids during COVID. And oh my God, never again. My kids just recently asked, "Can we be homeschooled again?" No. The homeschool coordinator asked me when I was done with it, they said, "How'd you like it?" I said, "I hated it. I never want to do that again."
I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. My wife loves it. That's her calling, and I'm thankful for it. But if she said, "No, you're going to start homeschooling," I'll be like, "Well, public school's not bad, So, two more. Okay, this one's a good one. I kind of like this one. What is your favorite thing in your refrigerator?
Oh, that's a great question. I think my favorite little treat is, believe it or not, cottage cheese with fruit and honey.
Really?
That is so delicious. I eat it all the time. I love it.
Ah, wow. Well,
Actual cut up fruit, fresh, whatever's in season, a little bit of honey. I mean, it feels very indulgent, but it's actually pretty healthy.
That, as I say, that sounds incredibly healthy.
Yeah, but it doesn't feel healthy. Like, it feels, that honey makes it just like so delicious.
you know
You
what?
can't take out the honey.
I'd say, what else doesn't feel healthy is a cinnamon roll. That's probably because it's not, but it tastes great. Okay. All right.
I'm not a huge fan of cinnamon rolls, but man, I could eat some Oreos and Skittles.
Oh, sure.
Sure. Yeah. No, I'll go with you on that one. All right. Last one. Here we go. Last one. Then I'll let you go. If you could change one thing about the trucking industry or the transportation industry, what would it be? Could be HazMat related, not whatever. Just what would you change about the industry?
I think I would prefer if more drivers, and there are some really great ones out there, but if more drivers truly cared and weren't just in it for the job, if they really cared about their loads and their customers. And I'm not going to lie to you, the customers don't treat the drivers very well either, and that would need to change as well. I mean, some of the things that you see, the signs they put up for drivers are just abhorrent. Mm-hmm. So I would love to be able to change that whole dynamic there. Yeah,
no, that's a great one. Yeah, there's a lot of headbutting that's going on out over the road right now, and that would be, yeah, that's a good one. So. All right, Wendy, you passed it. You passed the supersonic speed round, and I appreciate that. Tell us again, how can we get in touch with you? How can we get a hold of you? How can we get you to work for us?
So you can always find me on LinkedIn. Please connect. As long as you're in the industry and not trying to sell me something, then I'm happy to accept a connection. And then my phone number is 267-324-4002. My website is starshazmat.com, stars with an S. And then info@starshazmat.com is the email. So please reach out to me. If you have questions, I would love to talk with you about it.
And that is that. Okay. I guarantee that you learned something in that interview. And if you didn't, you're lying to yourself. Just saying. Hey, anyways, thank you very much for tuning in to Sonic Safety with me, Sam Watts. Make sure that you check out my friends over at Ewing Safety and Industrial. That's ewingsafety.com. Visit them in Morris, Illinois. You'll like what they got down there. So until next time, make sure that you drive safe.